afternoon and welcome back to My Harlem Portraits, the show that wants to shed a light on the fundamental contribution of African Americans to the building of its country and on Black excellence. Today, we are here to celebrate the life of a very great man who embodied the essence of the Renaissance man and led a life of purpose, Mr. Clifford FRAZIER, founder of the Dwyer Culture Center, an institution both in Harlem and in the world, and Emmy Award winner for To Be a Man in 1983. That couldn't be a more appropriate title for who he was. Unfortunately, we are celebrating his life because sadly, he recently made his transition on February 3rd at the age of 87. Through his commitment to many organizations and institutions, he touched and inspired countless number of aspirants in the world of business, community, humanitarian services, and the arts. To celebrate his life, we have invited a person who has been very, very close to him for many, many years now, MINERVA DIAZ, who is the Director of Operations of the Dwyer Culture Center. Welcome, Minerva.
Hey, Maria, good to be here.
And Jeff Watkins, who is the founder of Conreal, a global transmedia production and distribution company, who is now creating an experience to highlight Cliff's life and achievement. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate what you're doing on the show.
Thank you for being with me. So I'm gonna start with you, Minerva. Tell us when you met Cliff and how you got in touch with him and started working with him and for him.
Okay, I met Cliff through his partner of 34 years, Ademola Lugbefola, when he invited me to the opening of the Dwyer Culture Center in December 2008. I volunteered my time there from time to time in the following year, and then I was invited to represent ICA, which is the not-for-profit organization that he has at the Dwyer, and the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolence, which he is the executive director, or was the executive director of. So they asked me to represent them at the United Nations Conference in Mexico. And when I came back, I just started working with them. And then a year later, 2 years later, I was asked to be the director of operations at the Dwyer Culture Center.
Fantastic. That's really an incredible. We're gonna go through his life with you. And I wanted to ask Jeff, what made you decide to start this project about his life?
It was actually something, it was really through my relationship with Minerva that I didn't know, I got a chance to meet Clifford FRAZIER through Minerva and going to the Dwyer Cultural Center a few times. And that was from a pursuit of one of the folks that I look up to, or two folks I look up to, Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis. And when I saw their relationship with Cliff, and I had gotten a strong relationship with Minerva through a mentor of mine, for me, it just started feeling like a lot of things that were aligning and coming together in my goals of preserving and telling the legacies of great people, have come before me. I've dedicated a lot of work to it. So it was really the relationship with Minerva. I got to meet Cliff and just feeling his spirit and feeling, I mean, there's plenty of people that he's touched and plenty of people that have spent a lot more time with him, over the years. But for me, I just do what I feel and what I'm called to. And something me and Minerva have actually been discussing before he even passed away. I mean, actually been a couple of years, so right now, I think it's time to move and act, on what we've been touched with in the spirit.
That is what you're doing, and the reason why you're doing this are the same reason why I'm doing this show. And in particular, I'm talking about Clifford FRAZIER, Mr. Clifford FRAZIER now, because I was at his celebration of life in February 19th at the Abyssinian Baptist Church. And I've met him a few times, but I never knew how much he had done and all the people he had touched. He was such a humble person that when you met him, he would never tell you about what he did. He was always talking about what other people did. So I was so surprised of all the amazing achievements that he had done and all the people who were there and talked about his life, that I asked Minerva, let's do something about him. We need to celebrate his life and talk about this incredible man of Harlem. Is a father of Harlem in reality. So he wasn't from here, right? Clifford was
He was born in Detroit.
Born in Detroit, and Clifford and Woody King Jr., who is the founder of a New Federal Theater, they were friends and acting colleague in Detroit. That's how they met. And then they came to New York in 1965, and Cliff had a very good role, landed the lead role in Lorenzaccio by Alfred de Musset, and it was a big hit. And from there, he could have had an incredible career as an actor. And this is one of the things that Woody King was talking about during the celebration. But instead, he preferred to be in the background and help other people, new generations, and so on. So tell us a little bit about that, Minerva.
Okay, well, Cliff, he was involved in a lot of things. When I met him, I knew nothing about his history. And when I found out about his history, I wanted for people to understand that history, because he literally, with Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee, Shirley MacLaine, Harry Belafonte, and Sidney Poitier, they really changed the face of media. In the 70s, through Community Film Workshop Council, through Third World Cinema, and through Institute of New Cinema Artists, they trained a generation of Black filmmakers. And
Fraser was involved with them, right?
Cliff Frazier was the thread through those three organizations, and he was the administrator. He's the one that put the programs together. He's the one that facilitated everything. All these other people supported him. As a matter of fact, Sidney Poitier was the one that appointed him the director of Community Film Workshop Council. When Sidney Poitier, in 1968, he was on the executive committee of American Film Institute. And there was a lot of organizations around the country reaching out to American Film Institute to help them with their workshops. And they realized that there was a void there that needed to be filled. So Sidney Poitier was looking for someone to head Community Film Workshop Council. And they interviewed Cliff Frazier. They also interviewed Woody King and a third person, I'm not sure who, but Cliff Frazier got the position. And from there on, he just went out and he did his thing. And he did it through, I think it was about 8 states throughout the country, including Puerto Rico. And when all the graduates, when all the apprentices graduated, they also had a career training program. And in that career training program, they were able to place graduates through various stations throughout the country. And most of the time, it was the first time they hired a person of color behind the scenes.
Wow.
And then from there, he also was the executive director of the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolence.
Yes.
And he
Let's
also
stop there a second there and see if Jeff has something to say about this part of his life. Something that it's interesting.
That's the part that really draws me. That's the part that there's a lot of folks that with these leaders, they were able to put together. I know they probably weren't even looking at it in leadership. They're looking at it in ways to help transform and being guided in spirit. But that's the part that I admire the most. you know, and one strong regard is that they dedicated so much time and effort and commitment to teaching and uplifting and creating opportunities for those and generations that come after them. And for me, that's what I strive to do in my life. And I looked at Clifford as a beacon of that, and one that was accessible, one that was there, right there in the heart of Harlem. And so going to Dwyer and seeing him how he interacted with Minerva and Ademola, and just continuing to embody that until his last days of giving and being selfless. That's what I want to convey. That's what I want to be a part of, showing and continuing and expressing through whatever forms and gifts that I may have.
That's very interesting.
And I just want to make one point. I don't know if too many people know this, but Cliff was offered the opportunity to run ABC studios, and he turned it down to stay within his community.
Wow.
That just speaks a lot to who he was.
Not many people would do that. That is incredible. And he was a lot of things. And one of the things that he was also an entrepreneur. He was a businessman. So I know that at a certain point he met Rosa Rivers and Ademola, as you said, and they started together the Dwyer Culture Center. So the three of them started this center. And then him and King, Woody King, remained friends for all their life. And he served also, Cliff served also as chairman of a new Federal Theater Board of Directors for 15 years, during which they honored Ossie Davis and Sidney Poitier during that time. Then in 1968, and that's what you were talking about, after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Cliff left his acting career and dedicated himself to fulfill what he continued to underline was Dr. King's vision of a beloved community, which should have been free of evils and racism, of poverty and violence. And he created programs and activity specially aimed at completing and bringing to fruition this vision. Tell us a little bit about that, Minerva.
Tell you about
Martin Luther King.
When Martin Luther King was assassinated, that changed Cliff's life. So he wanted to do something more than just acting. So he walked away from a promising career, because Cliff could have been another Sidney Poitier. He could have been a Harry Belafonte, but he walked away from that because he wanted to give back to the community. And what he focused on was the gifts that he had, and what can he do with what he knew about to help others, prosper, and to, what's the word I'm looking for? He just wanted people to be empowered. So he took his acting and turned it into a service. So when Sidney Poitier reached out to him, he automatically jumped to the opportunity to teach. And like I said, he trained a generation of Black filmmakers. The first camera woman came out of that program. Nima Barnett, the first African-American woman to produce on a major network, came out of that program. Preston Holmes, who was the line producer for Spike Lee's movies, Malcolm X, Hustle and Flow, he came out of that program. The Hudlin brothers, they came out of that program. Felipe Luciano, who was one of the founders of the Young Lords and a two-time Emmy Award winning journalist, he came out of the program. So a lot of the people who graduated from that program, they elevated themselves to the cream of the crop in the fields that they were trained in. So Cliff was just selfless, and all he wanted to do was help others. And even till the last week prior to his passing. He was asking me for legal pads because he was always writing. He was always thinking of different ways to reach out to the community. And all the years that I've known him, never took a vacation.
Oh my
Never took a
God.
vacation. He was just, I don't even know how to describe Cliff. Cliff was a one-of-a-kind human being that I had the privilege to get to know and the privilege to work for.
And I've seen many pictures with you and Cliff, and it really looks more like a father and daughter relationship, yours.
Yeah, he was like a
Really,
father to me.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It-
I miss him.
it's very clear. It's very
Yeah.
clear and also from the interactions, the few times that I came there, it's very clear that was the kind of love that was between you and him. So it must be hard. Tell me
Yeah,
more
I
about,
miss him. I miss him.
tell me more about the International Communication Association, because he obtained through that, as a businessman, that to come back to his flair for business, he obtained in 1992 the Dwyer warehouse.
Mhm. So I believe International Communications Association, I believe it was established in circa 1980s. What year exactly, I'm not sure. But ICA for short owns the Dwyer Culture Center. So it's the organization that owns the Dwyer Culture Center. And they got together with John Cross Constructions and they developed the building. But it took 20 years to make that happen because there was a lot of challenges with the building. But after that, the job that was completed was a 51-unit condo building with the Dwyer Cultural Center occupying 75,000 square feet of space in the building.
7,500.
I'm sorry, yeah, 7,500. Thank you, Jeff.
And
And Ademola Luke Befolas was the vice president, and Boza Rivers was also a vice president. So yeah, the three of them together brought this project to fruition.
And we were talking about the Martin Luther King Center. So this was really emblematic for his flair for business, what he did, because not all artists and most people who are inclined for the arts, they don't have the business side. But you do, Jeff. Tell us a little bit about your career before, because you told me some things which are really very similar to what Cliff did.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, and that's, I definitely took my hat off to Cliff and his vision. And I think being moved by a vision, you'll learn, you'll adapt, you'll continue to grow in areas that you need to then fulfill that vision. If you do so with passion and you do so moving forward, without fear. And that was something that I strive to do. Becoming a filmmaker, becoming a media entrepreneur is something that is in my third career. I graduated from U.S. Naval Academy, very engineering, regimented military school. I was an officer in the Navy, being involved with search and rescue operations and damage control on a ship, to then being in Wall Street and being successful at Merrill Lynch, working out of their global headquarters here in New York for a few years, but then segueing into what I felt was my passion and a calling of being involved in the arts, but then fusing the opportunities and fusing the experiences I've had and the knowledge that I had to fulfill that vision. And that's from understanding a bit about business, understanding about leadership, project management through the Navy, and learning from esteemed and great artists like Minerva and other people, understanding the creative side, having a familiarity with it, and being able to touch and empathize and feel, what it is to create. So Clifford, just like how you're mentioning, his vision, understanding of history, understanding of his cultural awareness, self-awareness, along with what he can do, with his talent as an artist, but then also his ability to lead and to be a teacher, to be an educator, to be a leader, to be an activist, all these things is tremendous.
And I just wanted to say the last thing about him, when you're talking about being a teacher and teaching, in 2000, he co-founded the Harriet Tubman Charter School in the Bronx. And with the New York Martin Luther King Association and the African American Legal Defense and Education Fund, it was the first charter school awarded by the New York State Board of Regents. That is also another amazing achievement.
That was his focus. That school, towards the last few years of his life, that was his focus, because I believe he was focusing on the 600 students that were there. So that was his major focus in life, the last few years of his life. That school meant a lot to him.
And the lady who is in charge of the school, she was talking during his celebration, and it was really very inspiring what she said and what he did. We are coming towards the end. We have a couple of minutes more. I wanted to ask you Jeff, when you think this project will come to fruition, will be concluded, and people will be able to see it?
We're starting now. It's a very collaborative effort, and it's an effort that Minerva and I are continuing to grow upon, continuing to invest in and develop. It's going to feature different forms, different mediums of art and expression, through visual art, through film, through sound, and we want to fuse them to be very emblematic, and something that I think Cliff and a lot of the folks from that generation and these leaders and these cultural icons would be proud of. And I think it's going to take us, we're going to work on it throughout the year. I mean, definitely throughout the summer. Hopefully, I want this hopefully to be finished by the end of fall, and be able to kick off presenting and showing even different aspects of it as early as possible, because there are different, like I said, there are different mediums being involved, and from murals to portraits to speech and the film being fused into it, and each component, can stand on its own and be demonstrated and be exhibited. So looking at fall and looking to continue to collaborate with a lot of people that were even at the funeral, people that have much stronger relationships.
Yes.
With Clifford, I'm just an instrument, or a medium, and Minerva, I learn a lot from her and her relationship with Clifford, and I admire it. And so I think once this all starts coming together, we'll be able to get done, hopefully this year.
And I want to see you back here on my show to present.
Oh, for certain. Yes. I love what you're doing. I definitely love what you're doing, and and moving forward and sharing people's stories or legacies, and uplifting, your viewers.
Yeah, it's very important. I think it's important. Minerva, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you for having me.
Talking about your great mentor.
He's my mentor, my friend, my father figure, and he left a tremendous void. I mean, I could talk about Cliff forever, because he just gave of himself, and he gave 100% of himself, and he's just a tremendous loss,
So
but we continue on in spirit, we continue,
Yes.
we have to continue deepening and continuing tapping into his spirit, and that's how he stays alive, his legacy. We have kids talking about Clifford Frazier that never got a chance to meet him.
And his family must have been very supportive of him, because if you said also he never took vacations and so on, and he was able to do all this, he must have had a wonderful family. So my condolences also to his family who was there, but I didn't want to talk to them, because those days you don't really want to talk to strangers. So thank you again for this, and thank you, our viewers, for being with us again. See you next Saturday, 12:30, as usual, for My Harlem Portraits. Thank you and bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.